She was wearing her Apple Watch when she went overboard. Investigators found it back on the boat. Her husband says it was an accident. Her daughter just returned from the Bahamas, and she believes less of his story than ever. This is the crime files. No sensationalism, no exploitation, just evidence, just analysis, just the pursuit of truth. On the night of April 4th, 2026, a 55-year-old woman named Lynette Hooker went out on a small 8-foot dinghy with her husband of 25 years. They were heading back to their sailboat, a 45-foot vessel named the Soulmate, anchored near Elbow Cay in the Abaco Islands, Bahamas. Only one of them made it back. According to the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Brian Hooker, 59, told authorities that his wife fell overboard during rough conditions. He said strong currents carried her away. He said he last saw her swimming toward shore. He said he paddled through the night. At approximately 4 a.m. on April 5th, Brian Hooker arrived at the Marsh Harbor boatyard. Alone. He told someone at the boatyard his wife was missing. That person notified the authorities. And then the questions began. Questions from investigators. Questions from family. Questions that, as of today, have no satisfactory answers. Here is what we know. Here is what cannot be explained. And here is what a daughter flew across the ocean to find out for herself. Lynette Hooker was a mother, a sailor, and an adventurer. She and Brian had been together for about 25 years. They started sailing more than a decade ago, a small 2-person boat, then a larger vessel, eventually the Soulmate, which they purchased in Texas and sailed through the Gulf of Mexico and into the Bahamas. They documented everything under the name the Sailing Hookers: Instagram posts, TikToks, YouTube videos, sea turtles gliding through crystal water, storms rolling in over Marsh Harbor, cooking on a solar oven aboard the boat, 2 people building a life on the open sea. Lynette's last public post was March 29, 2026. She wrote about the Sea of Abaco being very entertaining and hoped the rain would stop so the adventure could continue. 6 days later, she was gone. Her daughter, Karli Aylesworth, 28, described her mother to CNN as her #1 supporter. She told NBC News that Lynette was an experienced swimmer and a skilled sailor with more than a decade on the water. She said she found it almost impossible to believe her mother would simply fall off a boat. But the relationship between Brian and Lynette was not without serious complications. Court records and police reports confirm that in 2015, a Kentwood, Michigan officer documented a mutual assault incident. Brian told police Lynette had struck him multiple times. Lynette, described in the report as highly intoxicated, said Brian had struck her in the forehead. No visible injuries on Lynette were documented. A prosecutor reviewed the case and determined there was insufficient evidence as to who started the altercation. The case was dismissed without charges. Court records also show Brian Hooker was acquitted by a Michigan jury of a child abuse charge in 2006. Details of that case are not public. Karli told Fox News something that went far beyond a 2015 incident. She stated there was a history of Brian choking Lynette, and, on at least one occasion, threatening to throw her overboard. CNN was unable to independently confirm those specific incidents with law enforcement. Brian Hooker's attorney denied those allegations. And in early 2024, more than 2 years before the disappearance, Lynette herself sent private messages to a fellow boater and friend, Marnie Stevenson. Those messages were obtained exclusively by CBS News. In them, Lynette wrote that she and Brian had called it quits. She had left the boat and gone to stay with her mother in Florida. She wrote to her friend, and these words matter: "It was real bad. I can't be out there with him." 1 month later, she and Brian reconciled. By April 2026, they were sailing the Bahamas together on the Soulmate. One of the couple's neighbors in Michigan later told the Detroit News that Brian and Lynette had fought for a long time and that the violence was, quote, pretty bad. The final video they posted together before the disappearance reportedly joked about getting sick of each other. Now let us build the chronology, because in cases like this, the timeline is everything. The night before Lynette disappeared, a bartender identified only as Ken, 38, who works at the Abaco Inn on Elbow Cay, told the New York Post that Brian and Lynette Hooker spent the early evening of April 3rd at the resort's pool area. According to Ken, they arrived around 4:30 in the afternoon. Lynette went to the pool ahead of Brian. Brian ordered 2 rum and cokes. He paid and said very little. Ken described him as tall, tattooed, like an old war vet. The couple stayed for roughly 2.5 hours. They left around 7 or 7:30 that evening. Here is the detail Ken highlighted to reporters. During the entire time they were there, he never actually saw or spoke to Lynette. Brian was the only one who came to the bar. Lynette was at the pool but remained unseen by staff. The following evening, April 4th, 2026, Brian and Lynette boarded their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. Destination, the Soulmate, anchored near Elbow Cay. They departed Hopetown at approximately 7:30 p.m. According to Brian Hooker's account to the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the conditions deteriorated quickly. Roughly 20-knot winds picked up, choppy seas. Brian told investigators that Lynette fell off the dinghy at approximately 7:30 p.m. He told police she was wearing the engine's ignition safety lanyard, commonly called a kill switch, when she went into the water. When she fell overboard, the engine cut off. He could not restart the motor. He said he threw a flotation device to her. He said he last saw her swimming toward shore. He said the wind blew them apart. He said he tried to paddle with a single oar. He said he anchored the dinghy at one point and yelled for her. He said he drifted for hours. At 4 a.m. on April 5th, Brian Hooker arrived at the Marsh Harbor boatyard. The distance between the departure point and Marsh Harbor is approximately 4 miles by water. He told someone at the boatyard his wife was missing. That person contacted police. That Sunday evening, around 8 to 8:30 p.m., Lynette's daughter, Karli Aylesworth, received a phone call. Nearly 16 hours had passed since Lynette allegedly went overboard. Karli described the call to CNN in detail. Brian said, "Matter of fact, your mom is missing. We don't know where she is. She's been missing since last night. He mentioned coming to see her soon, then ended the call." Karli told CNN she felt like he had dropped a bomb on her and then kept talking about something else before simply hanging up. That tone, that phrasing, that timing, it stopped her cold. Search and rescue operations began April 6th by sea, land, and air. The Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, and the U.S. Coast Guard all participated. By April 8th, authorities publicly transitioned from a search and rescue operation to a search and recovery operation. That distinction is significant. It means authorities had concluded Lynette Hooker was unlikely to be found alive. Before his arrest, Brian Hooker made a phone call to a friend named Blaine Stevenson, a fellow sailor who knew the couple. Stevenson recorded the call without Brian's knowledge and later shared it with CNN. In that call, Brian gave his most detailed account yet. He described Lynette bouncing off the dinghy. He said the sun had set approximately 10 minutes after she fell over. He said he believed she tried to swim back toward the sailboat, which was approximately 1,000 yards from where the incident occurred. On April 8th, Brian Hooker was arrested by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. He was taken into custody at approximately 7:30 p.m. in Marsh Harbor, Abaco. Royal Bahamas Police Force Assistant Commissioner Eduardo Dames told Reuters the arrest was based on probable cause. Simultaneously, the U.S. Coast Guard confirmed it had opened a criminal investigation into Lynette Hooker's disappearance. On April 10th, Brian was questioned for more than 3 hours at Central Police Station in Grand Bahama. His attorney confirmed he was asked about whether he had caused harm to his wife and about the couple's personal life. She also confirmed that investigators did not ask specifically about physical evidence from the boat or their electronic devices. On April 13th, Brian Hooker was released from custody. No charges were filed. Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner Shanta Knowles confirmed he remained a suspect in the ongoing investigation. His attorney told reporters outside the station authorities had no evidence against her client. Brian Hooker said nothing to reporters as he walked out. A body language analyst interviewed by Fox News observed that he appeared very matter-of-fact and collected, with no sense of urgency. He subsequently left the Bahamas, citing his mother's illness. Karli Aylesworth told CBS News that Brian leaving showed he was not much of a man of his word. She then boarded a flight to the Bahamas herself. This is where the official version starts to fracture. Investigators, journalists, friends, and family have each identified specific points in Brian Hooker's account that do not align with other known facts. We present each one based on documented reporting. We present the counter-arguments as well. We are not in the business of drawing conclusions the evidence cannot yet support. The first contradiction is the 8 hours. Brian Hooker told investigators and friends that he spent approximately 7 to 8 hours on the water before washing ashore near Marsh Harbor. The bartender Ken, familiar with the local geography and currents, told the New York Post that this timing raises significant questions. He said the distance between Elbow Cay and Marsh Harbor is only about 4 miles. He told reporters the trip simply should not have taken that long, even in rough conditions. Ocean conditions in the Abaco area are documented as unpredictable. Winds can be severe. Without precise current modeling data for that specific night, the timeline cannot be definitively ruled impossible. But the question is real, and it has not been answered publicly. The second contradiction involves the kill switch. Brian Hooker told authorities that when Lynette fell overboard, she was wearing the engine's safety lanyard, the kill switch. This device, when pulled from the ignition, cuts the engine. This, he said, is why the motor went dead. Karli Aylesworth has publicly questioned this. She said she does not believe her mother would have been wearing the kill switch on her body. Experienced sailors typically clip the lanyard to a wrist or jacket. It is not typically carried loose in a pocket or bag. Brian Hooker's friend Daniel Danforth made a related observation to CBS News. He said that in photos and videos the couple had taken while on the dinghy, neither of them is clearly seen wearing the kill switch lanyard. In a recorded account Brian gave before his arrest, he stated the dinghy key went over with her because it was not clipped to anything or anybody. He said she had a spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her. That version raises its own question. If neither person had the kill switch clipped to them, why did the engine cut out when she fell? The third contradiction involves the flotation device. Brian Hooker told investigators he threw a flotation device to Lynette. He later left a voicemail for Karli confirming that Hopetown Search and Rescue had found a flotation device in the water. The device was indeed recovered. Authorities confirmed this. But Karli Aylesworth has questioned the nature of the device itself. Questions have been raised about what type of flotation device it was, how large it was, and whether it could realistically help keep an adult woman afloat in open ocean conditions. No official forensic report on the recovered flotation device has been made public. The fourth contradiction, and the one generating the most attention right now, is the Apple Watch. According to reporting by the Drop Dead Serious podcast with Ashley Banfield, a photograph shows Lynette Hooker wearing her Apple Watch on the evening she disappeared. That same Apple Watch was subsequently found back aboard the Soulmate. Not in the water, not on Lynette, on the boat. If Lynette went into the water wearing that watch, the watch would need to have been removed before she went overboard, or been separated from her and returned to the boat by some mechanism that has not been explained. Apple Watch's record heart rate, GPS location, and movement data. If the device was intact when recovered, it may contain significant data from the evening of April 4th. Karli Aylesworth has specifically named the Apple Watch as one of the new questions she brought back from the Bahamas. She told reporters she could not account for how it returned to the boat. No official statement has addressed the Apple Watch. Brian Hooker's legal team has not publicly addressed it. According to reporting from the Detroit News, Bahamian authorities seized from the couple's boat under a search warrant a digital video recorder, digital tablets, and cell phone-related equipment. The warrant stated those devices may contain material evidence related to a missing person causing bodily harm. Whether the Apple Watch was among the seized items is not confirmed publicly. The fifth contradiction is the phone. Brian and Lynette Hooker always had their phones with them. They documented their lives constantly. Every island, every sunset, every repair on the boat. So why, on the specific night Lynette went overboard, did Brian apparently have no functioning phone? Daniel Danforth told CBS News he wondered why Brian's phone didn't work, or why they didn't have their phones in the boat that night. Brian Hooker paddled for 7 to 8 hours by his account without being able to call for help. No call to emergency services, no distress signal. He made it to shore and had a stranger contact police. The question of why a couple that documented every moment online had no phone available during the most critical night of their lives remains publicly unanswered. The sixth contradiction comes from Brian's own private messages. The day after Lynette disappeared, Daniel Danforth reached out to Brian. Brian replied, "The wind blew me away from her, and she swam toward the sailboat, and we lost sight of each other pretty quickly as it was just about sundown." He added, "I drifted and tried to paddle with one oar for the next 7 hours until I washed up behind the shore of the next island over and was able to get some help finally." Danforth told CBS News, when he compared Brian's private messages with the public account Brian had given authorities, the stories don't really match up. In Brian's messages to Danforth, Lynette was casually swimming back toward the sailboat. In the official version reported by police, she was swept overboard and out to sea by strong currents. These are two meaningfully different images of what happened. One describes someone in control, swimming calmly. The other describes someone swallowed by ocean forces. Which version is accurate? And why do they differ? The seventh contradiction involves the boat itself. After Lynette disappeared, before Brian was arrested, Brian moved the Soulmate from Elbow Cay, where it had been anchored, to Marsh Harbor. Danforth told CBS News he was concerned about this. Moving a vessel that may be central to a missing persons investigation is the kind of decision that investigators would want to understand. The Soulmate was subsequently inspected by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Whether forensic examination of the boat was conducted and what those results showed has not been publicly confirmed. The eighth contradiction involves the notification timing. Lynette allegedly went overboard at approximately 7:30 p.m. on April 4th. Karli Aylesworth received Brian's phone call that Sunday evening around 8 West to 8:30 p.m. That means Karli was notified approximately 16 to 17 hours after her mother went into the water. She told CNN the call was delivered in a matter-of-fact tone. No panic, no urgency, no desperation. He said her mom was missing, mentioned coming to visit, and ended the call. Karli told reporters she was still processing those words when he started talking about something else. The ninth contradiction involves the clothing Lynette was wearing. The last known photograph of Lynette alive, taken at the Abaso Inn pool area on the evening of April 4th, shows her in a green cover-up. Karli Aylesworth has raised specific questions about whether Brian's account of what Lynette was wearing that night is consistent with what that image shows. Whether investigators have factored this into their assessment of Brian's account has not been publicly confirmed. Now it is important to hear not just what Brian said about this marriage, but what Lynette herself said. In January 2024, Lynette Hooker sent private messages to her friend and fellow sailor Marnie Stevenson. Those messages were obtained exclusively by CBS News. She wrote, "We decided to call it quits. I'm not going back. We were married 21 years. Our marriage lasted 6 weeks cruising. She had quit her job, sold her house, given away her belongings. She had gone all in on the sailing life, and it had broken down." She told Marnie she had gone to stay with her mother in Florida. When Marnie asked about reconciling, Lynette wrote words that have since stayed with everyone following this case. "It was real bad. I can't be out there with him." 1 month later, the messages show she and Brian had reconciled. Marnie sent her a note saying things looked better. Lynette replied with heart emojis and a thumbs up. 14 months later, she was missing in those same waters. The evidence shows Lynette Hooker knew something was wrong in that marriage. She left. She came back. And whatever brought her back, it was not enough to keep her safe. Approximately 4 days ago, forensic specialist Joseph Scott Morgan appeared in a public special responding to audience questions about this case. His key observations were these. First, investigations in open water are among the most forensically difficult any agency undertakes. There are no fixed crime scenes. Evidence disperses with current and tide. Bodies may never be recovered. Establishing a verifiable timeline is extraordinarily challenging. Second, the Hooker case still has significant gaps in the chronology. The timeline has not been publicly closed by investigators. Third, some parts of Brian Hooker's narrative continue to generate legitimate public and investigative doubt. He did not draw conclusions, but he did not dismiss the questions either. Morgan also noted that technology can help. Drift modeling, GPS data from devices, satellite imagery, and data recovered from wearables like smartwatches. Whether any of that technology has been applied to this case has not been publicly confirmed. Any serious investigation requires examining all plausible explanations. We present all of them. We do not choose sides. The first possibility is accidental drowning. The ocean conditions that night were documented as rough. Locals confirmed significant wind and choppy seas. The couple had been drinking. Boating in the Bahamas is poorly regulated. Accidents happen. In favor of this theory, Bahamian officials confirmed rough weather. A flotation device was found, consistent with Brian's account. No body has been recovered. No confirmed crime scene exists. Brian was released without charges because authorities stated they had no evidence. Against this theory, the Apple Watch found back on the boat, the 8-hour timeline questioned by a local expert, the kill switch inconsistency, the absence of a functioning phone, the delayed notification of family, and Lynette's own written words in 2024 saying she could not be out there with him. The evidence is partially consistent with this theory, but it leaves too many questions open. The second possibility is a staged incident following harm. Karli Aylesworth told NBC News she believes this was probably pre-planned. She said the sequence of events does not resemble a freak accident. In favor of this theory, prior documented domestic violence, Lynette's own written words about feeling unsafe, the Apple Watch back on the boat with no explanation, the discrepancies between what Brian told Danforth privately and what Brian told police publicly, the movement of the soulmate after the disappearance, the timing and tone of the notification call. Against this theory, no body has been recovered, no formal charges have been filed, no physical evidence against Brian has been publicly confirmed. His attorney maintains he is cooperating and innocent. The evidence supports investigation of this theory. It does not yet establish it as fact. The third possibility sits in the middle. What if Lynette's death was not premeditated, but what happened after she went into the water was shaped by decisions, delays, or panic that could carry legal consequences regardless of intent? What if Brian paddled the wrong direction? What if alcohol impaired his judgment in those critical minutes? What if he delayed calling for help out of fear of what it would mean? And what if those failures, even without malicious intent, contributed to her death? This theory does not fully account for the Apple Watch. It does not resolve the message inconsistencies, but it sits within the realm of what the current evidence might support. As of April 28, 2026, Lynette Hooker has not been found, no body has been recovered, no charges have been filed. Brian Hooker remains an official suspect. He is back in the United States with legal representation. His Michigan attorney has asked the public to treat him fairly. The Royal Bahamas Police Force has an open investigation. The U.S. Coast Guard has an open criminal investigation. Electronic devices seized from the soulmate under a search warrant are being reviewed by investigators. Karli Aylesworth returned from the Bahamas with 5 new specific questions: the Apple Watch, the kill switch, the flotation device, the notification timing, and the clothing Lynette was wearing that night. She has said she believes less of Brian's story now than she did before she left. The CBS News reporting on private messages to Daniel Danforth shows that what Brian told a friend privately does not fully match what was reported publicly. A forensic expert with national credibility said publicly that the chronology has significant unresolved gaps. The investigation continues. The search continues. The questions are real. The family is still waiting. This is not just a story about a woman who went overboard in the Bahamas. This is a story about what happens in the dark, on a boat, at sea, between 2 people, when the only witness is the one who came back to shore. This isn't just a story. It's a real life, a real family, and a case that may still have answers waiting to be found. The search for truth continues.